I was standing in my kitchen, staring at my phone, when the text came through, "Call me now. Urgent. Do not wait." My lawyer never texted in all caps. My hands started shaking before I even dialed his number, and in that moment, I didn't know that my own sister had been systematically stealing my inheritance for the past 6 months while I grieved our father's death. My name is Annie, and this is the story of how I almost lost everything to the person I trusted most in the world. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, I learned early that my sister Claire was the sun, and I was just supposed to orbit around her. She was 3 years older, prettier according to my mother, more charming, more everything. Mom made sure I knew it too. At family dinners, Claire sat at Dad's right hand. I sat at the far end, near the kitchen door. When Claire graduated college, Dad threw her a party at the country club with 200 guests. When I graduated, with honors, by the way, we had cake in the backyard with 12 people. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was stronger for it. But the truth is, it carved something hollow inside me that I spent years trying to fill. Dad was different though. He saw me. Really saw me. He'd call me on Tuesday nights just to ask about my week. He'd send me articles he thought I'd like. When I started my small business, a boutique marketing consultancy, he was my first investor. $5,000 that he didn't tell Mom or Claire about. He whispered to me at coffee one Sunday morning, "This is between us, Annie. Build something that's yours." If this story sounds familiar, tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Dad died suddenly last March. Heart attack at 62. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. I was the one who found him, slumped over his desk in his home office, still wearing his reading glasses. The sound I made when I saw him wasn't human. It came from somewhere deep and ancient, a place where daughters keep their love for their fathers. The funeral was a blur. I remember Claire crying beautifully, the kind of crying that looks good in photos. I remember Mom clutching Claire's arm like she was the only child she had left. I stood 3 feet away during the entire service, close enough to be in the family, far enough to feel like a stranger. After the service, Claire pulled me aside in the funeral home parking lot. Her heels clicked on the asphalt, sharp and certain. "Mom and I think it's best if I handle Dad's estate," she said, not looking at me. "You're too emotional right now, Annie. Let me take care of the paperwork." I was too broken to argue. I nodded. I actually thanked her. That was my first mistake. For the first month, I was drowning in grief. I couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything but sit in my apartment and replay every conversation I'd ever had with Dad, looking for something I'd missed. Claire called twice to check in, but the conversations felt scripted, like she was reading from a card. Then the small things started. Dad's lawyer, a kind man named Robert Chin who'd worked with Dad for 20 years, called and asked if I'd received the estate documents. I told him Claire was handling everything. There was a pause on the line, long enough to feel strange. "I see," he said finally. "Well, if you need anything, Annie, please call me directly." I should have heard the warning in his voice. 2 months after the funeral, I drove past Dad's house, the house I grew up in, and saw a for sale sign on the lawn. My heart stopped. I called Claire immediately. "Did you list Dad's house?" "Oh, Annie, yes. Mom and I decided it was for the best. Too many memories, you know? The market's good right now." Her voice was light, casual, like she was talking about selling a couch. "But Dad loved that house. Shouldn't we talk about this?" We did talk about it. Mom and I. You've been so distant, we didn't want to burden you. I felt something crack inside me, but I convinced myself it was grief making me paranoid. Claire wouldn't hurt me. We were sisters. 6 months after Dad died, I was finally starting to breathe again. My business was picking back up. I'd started seeing a therapist. I was learning to exist in a world without my father's Tuesday night phone calls. That's when my phone lit up with Robert Chen's text, "Call me now. Urgent. Do not wait." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I stepped out onto my apartment balcony, the September air cool against my skin, and dialed his number. Annie. His voice was tight, controlled. "I need you to come to my office immediately. There's something you need to see, and I can't discuss it over the phone." "What's going on, Robert?" "It's about your father's estate. Claire has been," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "There are significant irregularities." "How quickly can you get here?" "I was in my car in 5 minutes. Tap like if you've ever gotten a call that made your whole world tilt sideways." Robert's office was downtown, in one of those old buildings with marble floors and too much polish. His assistant ushered me into his conference room, where Robert sat surrounded by stacks of documents, his usually calm face drawn with something that looked like anger. "Annie, I'm going to be direct because that's what your father would want." He slid a folder across the table to me. "Your sister has been forging your signature on estate documents. She's transferred nearly all of your father's assets into her name and your mother's name. The house, the investment accounts, even the business holdings. She's left you with almost nothing." The words hit me like physical blows. I opened the folder with numb fingers. Inside were dozens of documents, each one bearing a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. It was close enough that someone who didn't know better might not notice, but I could see the differences. The way the curved too sharply. The way the E at the end lifted up instead of staying flat. "How much?" My voice didn't sound like my own. "Your father's estate was worth approximately $3.2 million. According to his will, it was supposed to be split evenly between you and Claire, with your mother receiving the house and a trust fund. Instead, Claire has allocated herself $2.1 million, your mother $1.1 million, and you," he pointed to a line in one of the documents. "You were designated to receive $50,000, which she claims your father wanted as a starter fund for your business." The room tilted. 50,000? Out of 3 million? "She's been telling your mother that this is what your father wanted. She produced a revised will that conveniently surfaced after his death, though it was never properly witnessed or notarized. Technically, it's not legally binding, but your mother believes it's real." I sat in that conference room for 2 hours, going through every document, every forgery, every calculated lie. Robert explained that Claire had been working with a different lawyer, someone less scrupulous, to process these documents quickly while I was too grief-stricken to handle estate matters. She'd used my pain against me. She'd weaponized my love for our father. When I finally left Robert's office, I sat in my car in the parking garage and did something I'd never done before. I didn't cry. I didn't call Claire to ask for an explanation. I didn't try to understand or make excuses. I got angry. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger. The cold, calculating kind. The kind that makes decisions and follows through. I thought about every time Claire had been chosen over me. Every time Mom had looked through me to get to her. Every time I'd made myself smaller so Claire could shine brighter. I was done being invisible. I called Robert back. What do I need to do to stop her? His voice warmed with something that sounded like approval. Now we're talking. First, we file an injunction to freeze all estate assets. Then we gather evidence of fraud. And Annie? We're going to do this quietly until we're ready to move. Claire can't know we're coming. How long will it take? 3 weeks. Maybe 4. Can you keep this a secret that long? I thought about all the years I'd kept my hurt a secret. Yes, I said. I can do that. Comment if you've ever had to plan in silence while someone thought they'd already won. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. Claire called twice, both times to check in that same hollow way. I kept my voice light, friendly, sisterly. I asked about her kids. I laughed at her jokes. I swallowed every ounce of rage and smiled through the phone. How are you doing, Annie? Really, she asked during the second call. Better, I said, meaning it in a way she'd never understand. I'm finally starting to move forward. That's so good to hear. You know Dad would want you to be happy. I had to bite my tongue until I tasted copper. Yeah. I know. Meanwhile, Robert and I built our case. We pulled bank records showing the exact dates and times of the fraudulent transfers. We obtained the original will from Dad's safe deposit box, the real one, properly notarized and witnessed, splitting everything evenly. We collected emails between Claire and her shady lawyer discussing managing Annie's expectations and keeping her in the dark until everything's finalized. Robert also discovered something else. Claire had taken out a line of credit against Dad's house in my name. Another forgery. She'd borrowed $200,000 and was planning to let me default on it. She's not just stealing from you, Robert said during one of our late-night meetings. She's actively trying to destroy your financial future. Claire organized a family dinner for Dad's birthday. He would have been 63. She invited me via text with 3 smiling emojis. Let's celebrate Dad together. Mom really wants both her girls there. Robert and I had planned for this. The injunction would be filed the next morning. Tonight was my last night playing the part of the obedient little sister. I arrived at Claire's house in Seattle's suburbs at 6 p.m. sharp. It was one of those perfect houses with perfect landscaping and a perfect family inside. Her husband Greg answered the door, all handshakes and small talk. Mom was already there, sitting in the place of honor at the dining table, wearing the pearls Dad bought her for their 30th anniversary. Claire swept in from the kitchen wearing an apron that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Annie. You're here. She hugged me, and I hugged her back, feeling the shape of her betrayal pressed between us. Dinner was salmon and roasted vegetables and small talk about nothing. Claire talked about her kids' private school. Greg talked about his promotion. Mom talked about her garden. I sat there, eating food I couldn't taste, counting down the minutes. Then Claire raised her wine glass. I want to make a toast, she said, her voice warm and theatrical. To Dad, who taught us the meaning of family. And to Mom, who's been so strong through all of this. And she looked at me with what might have been genuine affection or perfect acting. To Annie, who's finally healing. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too. And I smiled. The injunction was filed at 9 a.m. the next morning. By 9:15, all of Dad's estate assets were frozen. By 9:30, Claire's lawyer was calling her in a panic. By 10 a.m., Claire was calling me. I let it go to voicemail the first time. And the second. And the third. On the fourth call, I answered. "Hey, Claire." "Annie." Her voice was sharp, all the warmth from last night's dinner stripped away. "Did you do something with Dad's estate? My lawyer is saying there's some kind of legal hold." "I filed an injunction to prevent further fraudulent transfers," I said calmly. I was sitting at my kitchen table, watching the morning light stream through my window, feeling more clear-headed than I had in months. "Turns out forging someone's signature is illegal, Claire." Silence. Long and horrible. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You forged my signature on dozens of estate documents. You created a fake will. You stole over $2 million that Dad wanted me to have." "And Claire?" I let my voice drop. "You took out a $200,000 loan in my name. That's identity theft on top of fraud." "Annie, you're confused. You're still grieving, you're not thinking clearly. I have copies of every forged signature. Every fraudulent document. Every email between you and your lawyer. Robert Chin has been very thorough." Another silence. "Then, you went behind my back to Dad's lawyer?" The audacity of that question almost made me laugh. "No, Claire. Dad's lawyer came to me because he couldn't stand watching you steal from your own sister." "I didn't steal anything. I just redistributed things the way Dad really wanted. Dad's real will is very clear. 50-50 split. You decided you deserved more because you always have. Because Mom always told you that you were more important." Hit subscribe if you're tired of watching golden children get away with everything. Mom called an hour later. I knew she would. Claire had probably called her immediately, crying about how I was attacking the family. "Annie, what is going on?" Mom's voice was cold, imperious. The voice she used when I'd disappointed her, which was most of the time. "Did Claire tell you she's been forging my signature? That she stole my inheritance? She told me you're making accusations because you're unhappy with your portion of the estate." "My portion?" "Mom, I was supposed to inherit $1.6 million. Claire forged documents to take all but $50,000. She committed fraud. Claire wouldn't do that." 3 words. That's all it took to show me where I stood. After everything, after the evidence, after the forgeries, after Claire had stolen from both of us, Mom's first instinct was still to defend her. She did do that. I have proof. Robert Chen has proof. The courts have proof. Robert Chen is your father's lawyer. Of course he's on your side. He's on the side of the law, Mom. And the law says Claire committed fraud. I don't want to hear this. This is tearing our family apart. Something inside me finally, fully broke. No, Mom. Claire tore our family apart when she decided to steal from me. I'm just refusing to stay quiet about it. If you pursue this, Annie, you'll lose me too. I won't choose sides. You already chose, Mom. You chose the day Claire was born and you never stopped choosing. I'm done begging you to see me. I hung up. My hands were steady. The next 2 months were a hurricane of lawyers and court dates and depositions. Claire fought every step of the way, hiring an expensive defense team to claim she'd acted in good faith based on conversations with Dad about his wishes. But Robert was better. He had documentation. He had witnesses, Dad's accountant, his financial advisor, even the notary who'd witnessed the original will. He had the forged signatures analyzed by a handwriting expert who testified that they were clearly fraudulent attempts. The turning point came when Robert subpoenaed the emails between Claire and her lawyer. In one particularly damning exchange, Claire's lawyer had written, "If your sister questions anything, remind her she was too emotional to handle estate matters. By the time she figures out what happened, it'll be too late to contest." Claire had responded, "Perfect. Annie's always been easy to manage." When that email was read aloud in court, I watched Claire's face drain of color. Even her expensive lawyer looked uncomfortable. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for manipulation. She reviewed all the evidence over 3 days of hearings, then delivered her ruling from the bench. "Ms. Whitmore," she said, looking directly at Claire, "you have engaged in systematic fraud, forgery, and identity theft against your own sister during a period when she was grieving your father's death. This court finds your actions not just illegal but morally reprehensible." She ordered all assets returned to the estate for proper distribution according to Dad's original will. She also ordered Claire to pay my legal fees, Robert's fees, and restitution for the emotional distress she'd caused. Leave a comment if you believe justice sometimes really does happen. The money was redistributed within 30 days. I received my full inheritance, $1.6 million, exactly what Dad had intended. Claire received hers, minus the legal fees she had to pay. Mom kept the house and her trust fund, though she never called to ask how I was doing. Claire tried to reach out once, about 3 weeks after the judgment. She left a voicemail, "Annie, I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly. Grief makes people do crazy things. Can we talk? We're still sisters." I deleted it without responding. The truth is, grief doesn't make you forge someone's signature 43 times. Grief doesn't make you steal $2 million. Grief doesn't make you take out loans in your sister's name. Greed does. Entitlement does. A lifetime of being told you're more important does. I thought I'd feel triumphant when it was over. Instead, I felt tired. And sad. Not for what Claire lost, but for what we'd never really had. I'd spent my whole life hoping that one day she'd see me as an equal, a sister, someone worth protecting instead of exploiting. But you can't force someone to value you. You can only decide what you'll accept. I used part of my inheritance to expand my business. I hired 3 new employees. I moved into a better office space with windows that overlooked the water. I made a donation in Dad's name to a local charity that supports small businesses. And I started therapy, real, deep therapy, to untangle all the years of being the invisible daughter. 6 months after the court judgment, I ran into Claire at the grocery store. She was in the produce section, examining avocados, and she looked smaller somehow. Older. She saw me at the same moment I saw her, and for a second we both froze. Then she walked over. "Annie." "Hi." "Hi, Claire. How are you?" "I'm good." And I meant it. Really good. She nodded, shifting her purse on her shoulder. "I've been wanting to apologize. Properly, I mean. What I did was," she paused, searching for words. "There's no excuse. I let Mom's voice in my head tell me I deserved more, and I stopped seeing you as a person. I only saw what I could take." I looked at her for a long moment. I'd imagined this conversation 100 times, and in every version I'd either screamed or walked away. But standing there, holding a basket of groceries, I felt something different. Not forgiveness exactly, but release. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. I hope you figure out who you are when you're not being the golden child. It's actually easier out here. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stay to watch them fall. I had dinner plans with friends, real friends, the kind who celebrate your wins instead of stealing them. Here's what I wish I could tell every person who's ever been the invisible child, the overlooked one, the person who makes themselves small so someone else can shine. Your absence of drama is not the same as their abundance of love. I spent years telling myself that being the low-maintenance daughter made me stronger. That not needing attention was a virtue. But the truth is, I deserved attention too. I deserved celebration and protection and inheritance and a seat at the table where decisions about my life were made. Dad knew that. That's why he left me half. That's why he invested in my business. That's why he called every Tuesday night. He saw me when no one else did, and now I had to learn to see myself. The money helped, I won't lie. But what helped more was finally understanding that I didn't need Claire's approval or Mom's love to be worthy. I was worthy because I existed. Because I'd survived being invisible and came out the other side still kind, still honest, still capable of building something good. Claire took a lot from me, but she couldn't take that. I think about Dad sometimes, about what he'd say if he knew what happened. Part of me thinks he did know, not the specific betrayal, but the general shape of our family's brokenness. Maybe that's why he made sure his will was so clear, so ironclad. Maybe that was his last gift to me, proof that I mattered, written in legal language that couldn't be erased. If this story reached you at the right time, tap like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they matter, that being invisible doesn't mean being unimportant. It's been a year now since Robert's urgent text changed everything. My business is thriving. I'm dating someone kind who thinks I'm fascinating instead of forgettable. I bought a house with huge windows and a garden where I'm learning to grow tomatoes. Mom and I exchange birthday cards but not much else. Claire moved to California with her family. We're not in contact, and I've made peace with that. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones you have to love from a distance, or not at all. I still think about that moment in Robert's office, when I first saw those forged signatures. How my whole world tilted. How I realized that betrayal doesn't always announce itself with cruelty. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in concern, in promises to handle everything, in the quiet theft of what should have been yours. But I also think about what came after. How I stopped waiting for permission to take up space. How I learned that anger, the right kind of anger, can be clarifying. How I discovered I was stronger than anyone, including myself, ever gave me credit for. The invisible daughter became visible. Not because someone finally saw her, but because she decided she was worth seeing. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've made it this far, please leave a comment telling me what resonated with you. Your stories matter too. Subscribe for more real stories about betrayal, justice, and finding your way back to yourself. You're not alone in this. To anyone out there who's ever been the second choice, the afterthought, the one whose pain gets dismissed because you're not as emotional, document everything, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to fight for what's yours. The people who truly love you won't ask you to stay small. And if staying in the family means losing yourself, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. I'm Annie, and I'm done being invisible.